On a day when Prime Minister Narendra Modi openly conveyed India's concerns over increasing anti India activities in Canada to Justin Trudeau, hundreds of pro Khalistani Sikhs in Canada turned out for a so called referendum event. India Canada relations have been strained for quite some time due to the presence of pro Khalistan separatist groups in Canada and the Trudeau government's perceived inaction against these groups. This was reflected even during the G20 summit in Delhi. Trudeau's participation in the G20 summit was a low key affair than that of some of his G7 counterparts, and it occurred against the backdrop of tensions between his government and India, the host country, over Ottawa's handling of Sikh separatists. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's failure to secure a formal meeting with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G20 summit was a setback. But a brief, last minute pull aside meeting was the best he could have hoped for given the strained state of relations between the two countries. A pull aside is an informal meeting, a step down from a bilateral meeting, which can happen even in hallways. The meeting between the two leaders did not go well. Instead of a breakthrough in relations or even a glimmer of hope, Trudeau was strongly rebuked by India for Canada's handling of Khalistani extremism. The statement issued by Ministry of External Affairs after their meeting stated, Prime Minister Modi highlighted that India-Canada relations are anchored in shared democratic values, respect for rule of law and strong people-to-people ties. He conveyed our strong concerns about the continuing anti-India activities of extremist elements in Canada. They are promoting secessionism and inciting violence against Indian diplomats, damaging diplomatic premises, and threatening the Indian community in Canada and their places of worship. The nexus of such forces with organized crime, drug syndicates, and human trafficking should be a concern for Canada as well. It is essential for the two countries to cooperate in dealing with such threats. The Prime Minister also mentioned that a relationship based on mutual respect and trust is essential for the progress of the India Canada relationship. Despite being strongly rebuked by India over its handling of Khalistani extremism, Trudeau remained defiant and dismissive of the criticism.
Over the years with Prime Minister Modi, we've had many conversations on both of those issues. Obviously, Canada will always defend freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, freedom of peaceful protest. That's something that's extremely important to us. At the same time as we're always there to prevent violence, to push back against hatred. I think on the issue of the community, it's important to remember that the actions of the few do not represent the entire community or Canada. The flip side of it, we also highlighted the importance of respecting the rule of law.
Some other self-goals from Canada led to bitterness between the two nations. Prior to his visit to India, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to express his disappointment that Ukraine was not invited to the G20 summit, which is being hosted by India. A week ahead of G20 summit, Canada abruptly suspended trade negotiations with India without providing any explanation. Trudeau also hinted that he would raise the issue of foreign interference with India's leadership, reiterating the Canadian intelligence community's assessment that India, along with Russia, China, and Iran, interferes in Canada's domestic affairs. He also took up the matter with PM Modi.
The message is the one that we have continued to deliver to all our partners and allies around the world, as well as countries that we have concerns with, which is making sure that respect for the rule of law, integrity and sovereignty of democratic institutions and processes, and the respect for the sovereign choices of citizens in and of a given country to choose their future. diaspora Canadians make up a huge proportion of our country, and they should be able to express themselves and make their choices without interference from any of the many countries that we know are involved in interference challenges.
This was Trudeau's first visit to India since the disastrous trip in February 2018 when he was snubbed by the Indian government for his links with Khalistani extremists. This time again, the stage was set for another diplomatic catastrophe. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's performance at the G20 Summit was bare minimal. He was not present during the announcement of an India Middle East Europe transport corridor and other main highlights. Trudeau also skipped the President of India's reception for the G20 leaders. He did not have any major bilateral meetings with other leaders, only two one on one meetings with the Prime Minister of Australia and the President of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union.
From breaking news, detailed analysis, in-depth interviews, and explainers, follow the Times of India. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like our videos and hit the bell icon to stay updated with the latest.